Chapter 8. On bad days Jas wondered if he had figuratively taken his father's place, just as he'd literally taken Billy's place behind the wheel of Jeep. Was this his destiny? Billy Dent made no secrets of his plans for Jas. "You'll be the greatest ever, Jasper. They'll never catch you. You'll be the new boogeyman parents use to scare their kids into behaving. You'll make everyone forget Speck and Dahmer, and even Jack the goddamn Ripper. My boy, my boy." But today wasn't a bad day. Play practice had gone well. Connie had forgiven him for getting caught breaking into the morgue. A part of him wished he could forget about tracking down whoever had killed Jane Doe. Just be a normal guy. Look to the future, not the past. Maybe focus on the play, on school, on being a better friend to Howie and a better boyfriend to Connie. Prove once and for all to her dad that he was a good fit for his daughter, and prove to the world that he wasn't going to grow up to be the new Billy. That would be nice. Yeah, right. And Howie might be starting center for the Pistons next season. As his grandmother's house came into view on the left, a familiar sight greeted him. A late model sedan parked in the driveway. He groaned out loud, then plastered a pleasant grin on his face. It was easy, reflexive. Jas had been cunning the sedan's owner for a while now. He parked next to the sedan and climbed out. It was the only person who annoyed him more than Doug Weathers. Melissa Hoover, social worker, sat on the front porch step. She worked for the county, and ever since Billy had gone to prison, she'd had one goal in life: getting Jas out of his grandmother's house and then either to a foster home or to his Aunt Samantha. Samantha, who never even met Jas, who hadn't spoken to Billy in 15 years, who swore she would flip the switch herself if the government ever came to its senses and decided to execute him. Yeah, sure, that would be great. Jas would have none of it, meaning he spent his days striving to prop Grandma up just enough that she could maintain custody of him. For a week after Billy's arrest more than 4 years ago, Jas had been with social services, and he spent 4 of those days in a foster home. After the initial shock of Billy being arrested and of being yanked out of his home, Jas fell back on the skills Billy had taught him: acting, conning, pretending to be normal. He'd easily fooled the social workers and the foster family into thinking it was fun. A sneak peek at his file revealed the phrase "impressively well adjusted." He gave them just enough that they thought he was working on his issues, and they released him into the custody of his grandmother, his closest living relative. But the truth was, he didn't know what his issues were. He knew he was afraid of his own powers and prowess, but that was his demon to wrestle with. No one on earth could understand what he'd gone through, what his upbringing had been like, so how could anyone help him? He was on his own. He might as well do that work here, in the house Billy had grown up in. Grandma's house was the only home remaining for him, quite literally. The wealthy father of one of dear old Dad's victims had bought the Dent house at auction and had it bulldozed, then burned the wreckage and debris to ash. Jas watched on TV as his childhood home went up in smoke, to the cheers of the gathered crowd. That same wealthy father later contacted Jas and offered to pay for him to attend the college of his choice, claiming, in a letter that went on for 10 pages, that there was no reason for Billy Dent to claim one more victim. Jas politely declined the offer. Jas sauntered over to Melissa, who stood and brushed off her skirt as he approached. "Did Grandma pitch a fit when she saw you coming?" he asked. "She went for the shotgun." Grandma Dent was never all that sane to begin with, her head packed full with a rotting collection of twisted religious dogma, crackpot conspiracy theories, and just plain wrong, handed down from generation to generation. Now she'd gone from unpleasant to outright dangerous. She avoided doctors, so no one could be sure, but even without a diagnosis, Jas was certain she was on the road to Alzheimer's Town, an opinion he was careful not to let slip. As bad as she appeared to the outside world, Jas knew she was actually much, much worse. Hateful, spiteful, and crazier than a windsock in a tornado, but family. "Both barrels are plugged and the firing pins are popped," Jas assured Melissa. "She's not trying to shoot you. She's just trying to scare you off. She's from that generation that doesn't trust government people, you know? I know, Jasper. When she's in this kind of mood, I just steer clear. Probably the best move. Jas cranked up the wattage on his smile. You look lovely today. I like the skirt. Melissa snorted and glared at him. Flattery will get you nowhere. But it had already gotten him exactly where he wanted to be. He was less than arm's length from Melissa. She was a plain woman, not unattractive, not attractive, just plain. In her late 30s, she was unmarried and likely to remain so, a workaholic aging out of her childbearing years. Jas knew the type. He'd studied everything he could about Melissa Hoover as soon as she'd been assigned to his case. He'd even followed her for a day or so, employing all the useful skills Billy Dent had passed down. He knew she was tough, that she took care of kids whether they wanted it or not. But he couldn't let her learn just how bad Grandma had gotten, because then she would be able to take him away. I don't know why you keep coming out here, Jas said, but I have to admit I like seeing you. Melissa wasn't falling for it. But she didn't say anything about how close he was to her. If he wanted to kill her, he was close enough now. Close enough that there was absolutely nothing she could do to stop him. As tough as she was, as capable as she was, her life was now in Jas's hands, and she didn't even know it. But people matter. Even people mucking around my life. She's a sick old woman, and she's not getting any better, Melissa said. I think she's starting to drift into senility, too. Ha! If only you knew. You're a great kid, great young man with your whole life ahead of you. So I should just cut her loose? I'm not saying that, but you should think of yourself. Thinking of myself is one of the diagnostic criteria for antisocial personality disorder, Jas told her. You should be glad I'm thinking of someone else. It means maybe I'm not a sociopath like Billy. You're staying with her because you think that maybe, by caring for the woman who started all this, you can somehow redeem her and your father and maintain your own. Are you listening to me, Jasper? Of course I am, he said smoothly. Look, I'm 17. In a year, I'll be out on my own. Even a year in this toxic environment could... Toxic? The mask slipped, and he let his anger show. You think this is toxic? Where were you on my 9th birthday when Billy showed me how to use quicklime to dissolve body parts? Melissa took a step back, her eyes wide, a hand on her purse. Damn, he'd gone too far. Mace? Probably mace. With women, it was almost always mace. But Jas couldn't put it past Melissa to be packing heat, and not some little girly Derringer either. He wouldn't be surprised to see her whip a big old Glock or Magnum out of that purse. Jas reached out and grabbed her by the wrist, widening his smile, making his eyes dance with mischief. Oh, come on, Melissa. I'm just joking. If I can't joke about this stuff, what can I joke about? Black humor? Good for the soul? Jas employed his very finest lost puppy dog look, guaranteed to work every time. I'm trying to help you, she said. I know you don't want my help, but you need it, and I'm not giving up on you. I'll go for now, but only because your grandmother's having a bad day. I'm coming back, Jasper. I'm going to help you whether you like it or not. Jas watched her back out of the driveway, forcing himself to wave jauntily as she pulled away, while inside he seethed. This was the worst, darkest part of the curse Billy Dent had passed down to him. Women. Jas knew that women were no better or worse than men, but he knew this at a remove, like a scientist knows that a photon moves without actually watching one in motion. His upbringing, his gut, his every screaming thought told him that women were simultaneously special and useless, that they compelled him, drove him on, but were ultimately expendable, fungible, good for a couple things, but not for long. Of Billy Dent's 123 or 124, depending on how you counted, victims, close to 100 had been women. Of the men, half were victims of opportunity. Women, and especially certain types of women, were prospects and nothing more. The gospel according to Billy Dent. Jas hated that part of himself. He hated the part of himself that looked at a strong woman like Melissa Hoover and could think only of how to make her weak and desperate before finally making that weakness and desperation moot. He thought of Connie. Connie was different. Connie was the one woman really, he could be himself with. Being himself meant a whole host of things, good, bad, grotesque. Connie accepted all of them, and most important of all, he allowed her to accept them, something he'd never done with anyone in his entire life. Did that mean there was hope for him? Hope for something beyond what Billy Dent had planned for him? He sank to the front porch step, his legs trembling and no longer trustworthy to hold his weight. Sometimes hope could be the most frightening thing in the world. When he'd managed to gather his wits, Jas pulled himself to his feet and dared to go inside. The vestibule was dark. Grandma had turned off the lights and closed all the blinds. "Grandma?" he called. "Hey, Grandma, it's Jasper. I'm alone." Nothing. He flicked on the light and made his way into what Grandma insisted on calling the parlor, even though it was nothing more than a cramped little day room, with a dusty old love seat and some side tables. His grandmother was curled into a corner on the love seat, her legs tucked up against her chest, her spindly form wrapped in a threadbare housecoat. Her thinning hair spun around her head like a whirlwind of gray cotton candy gone wrong. She was aiming a shotgun at him, her eyes wide and wild. "Hi, Grandma." "I'll shoot her!" Grandma shouted. "I'll shoot her right through you if I have to." "She's not with me, Grandma. I'm alone. I promise." He took another step toward her. "Don't think I won't shoot you. I will. I should have shot your daddy. Should have shot him when he came right out of me. Or maybe when he was still in me. That would have been good, too." "Can't argue with you there, Grandma." Another step. The gun was harmless, but she pulled the trigger. She'd learned how harmless it was, and she'd be twice as pissed. He wasn't always bad, you know. He grew up okay. It was when he met her that everything went all to hell. Billy Dent had been torturing and killing small animals since the age of 8, but Jas let Grandma have her delusions. She liked to believe that Jas's mother had made Billy into a sociopathic murder machine, and since Mom was long dead, there was no harm in letting her have that special, specific delusion. "Just like you," she yelled, raising the shotgun to track his head as he closed in on her. "Like you. I know what you've been up to. Just like your pappy. Taking up with whores. Putting your thing inside them. That's where the corruption comes from, boy." Jas bit the inside of his cheek to keep from laughing. Had he just been bemoaning his fears and constant struggles over women? Well, here was their genesis, handed down from crazy old Grandma Dent to sociopathic Billy Dent, and from there to Jas himself. Rarely did life provide such immediate context for a problem. Who needed therapy when Grandma could just explain everything? "I'm thinking of making macaroni and cheese for dinner," Jas told her, now mere inches from the shotgun. "I'll use the garlic breadcrumbs on the top the way you like it, and if we have some Romano cheese, I'll add that to the cheddar. How's that sound?" "I should blow your damn fool head off," Grandma snarled. "I don't want them damn elbow noodles either." "Right. Who would? I'll use bow ties. How's that?" "Bow ties are good. They remind me of How I Met Your Granddad. He was so handsome in his dress uniform," she sighed. "You think cooking me dinner means I'm not going to shoot you?" "Well, you can shoot me after dinner. If you shoot me before dinner, who's going to cook for you?" She squinted as if she were attempting long division somewhere behind those icy blue eyes. They were Billy's eyes, almost exactly. Jas's were hazel. His mother's eyes. He thought of them as same eyes. "Garlic? Bread? Crumbs?" she spat, thrusting the shotgun for emphasis. With a smooth, unhurried motion, Jas plucked the shotgun out of her hands. "Yep, garlic. No vampire will come within 100 yards of you after you eat this stuff." Grandma sniffed and closed her arms over her chest. "No such thing as vampires. Just monsters." Jas couldn't argue with that. He gave the shotgun back to Grandma, who looked at it like it was a new toy, and then, bored, laid it next to the love seat.